Commander Yellen Vasquez stood at the observation deck of Station Prometheus, watching the endless black of space stretch before her. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. Behind her, the soft hum of machines filled the air. Screens glowed with data from 1,000 sensors, scattered across human territory. This was the edge of everything humanity had built. Beyond this station lay the Arcturus Corridor, a vast stretch of space that connected the inner human worlds to the outer colonies. It was the most important route in human territory. Every ship carrying food, medicine, and people passed through here, and someone was about to make a terrible mistake. "Commander," said Lieutenant Park, his voice tight with worry, "long-range sensors are picking up something big. Very big." Vasquez walked to his station and looked at the screen. Her face remained calm, but inside, her heart beat faster. The display showed over 200 ships moving in perfect formation. They were not human ships. The design was unmistakable: sharp angles, dark metal, weapons bristling from every surface. The Veth hegemony. "They're not slowing down," Park said. "They're heading straight through the corridor." Vasquez had known this day would come. Not the Veth specifically, but someone. The galaxy was full of proud empires and ancient powers who looked at humanity and saw nothing worth respecting. Humans had only been traveling among the stars for 500 years. To species who counted their history in tens of thousands of years, humans were children, weak, unimportant. That was exactly what humanity wanted them to think. "Open a channel," Vasquez ordered. The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Commander." Vasquez spoke clearly, her words traveling across the void at the speed of light. "Veth Fleet, this is Commander Yellen Vasquez of the Human Territorial Defense Force. You have entered human sovereign space. Reverse course immediately. There will be no further warnings." She waited. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The response came not in words but in action. The Veth fleet did not slow down. It did not change course. It continued forward as if her message had been nothing more than the buzzing of an insect far ahead of the fleet. On the bridge of the massive flagship Dominion of Stars, Lord Calithver received a human transmission. He was old for a Veth, his scaled skin marked with the scars of 100 battles. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed rebellions. He had made entire species kneel before the might of the hegemony. And now some human female dared to threaten him. "My lord," his communications officer said carefully, "the humans have sent a warning. Standard territorial claim. Should we respond?" Calithver made a sound deep in his throat, the Veth equivalent of laughter. "Respond? To what? A few patrol ships and an aging station? The humans have nothing that can touch us." His tactical officer, a younger Veth named Sareth, studied his console with concern. "My lord, our intelligence on human military capabilities is limited. They have always been secretive about their true strength." "Because they have no strength," Calithver said. "They hide because they have nothing to show. I have studied their history. They fight among themselves constantly. They are barely unified. Their technology is inferior to ours by at least 2 centuries. He waved his clawed hand dismissively. "This shortcut through their territory will save us 6 months in our campaign against the Crystalline Accord. 6 months of supplies. 6 months of fuel. The humans will complain to the Galactic Council, and the Council will do nothing, because the Council always does nothing. By the time anyone responds, we will be long gone." Sareth wanted to argue, but he knew better. Lord Calithus had not risen to command the largest Veth war fleet by accepting advice from subordinates. He had risen by being right, again and again, for over 60 years. But something about this felt wrong. The human message had been too calm, too certain, as if they knew something the Veth did not. Back on Station Prometheus, Commander Vasquez watched the Veth fleet continue its course. She felt no anger, no fear, only a deep, tired sadness. "They're not stopping," Lieutenant Park said. "No," Vasquez agreed. "They never do." She turned to her communications officer. "Send the signal. Protocol Omega." The officer's face went pale. Everyone on the station knew what Protocol Omega meant. It had never been used in their lifetimes. It had never been used in their parents' lifetimes. It existed only in training manuals and old stories, the kind of stories that officers told each other in quiet moments, wondering if they were really true. "Commander," the officer said, "are you certain?" "I am." The signal went out. It traveled not just to other stations, but to places that did not officially exist. Hidden bases in asteroid fields. Ships running dark in the spaces between stars. Weapons platforms buried deep in the hearts of dead moons. Humanity had spent 300 years preparing for this moment. They had watched the galaxy with patient eyes. They had let other species believe they were weak, because weakness was useful. No one feared the weak. No one watched them too closely. No one noticed when they built things in the shadows. The great powers of the galaxy had forgotten an important truth about humans. They had forgotten that humans came from a world of predators, where survival meant thinking 10 steps ahead of your enemies. They had forgotten that humans had spent their entire history fighting each other, developing weapons and tactics that would make other species sick with horror. Most importantly, they had forgotten that humans never, ever forgot a slight. On the bridge of the Dominion of Stars, Lord Calithver settled into his command chair with satisfaction. In a few weeks, his fleet would emerge on the other side of human territory, and the Crystalline Accord would face the full might of the hegemony. It would be glorious. He did not notice the shadows gathering behind his fleet. He did not see the cold, dark shapes that slipped out of hiding places older than his entire military career. He did not know that every move his fleet made was being watched, recorded, and analyzed by minds that have been preparing for this exact scenario for generations. "Commander," Vasquez stood at her window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, 200 Veth ships were sailing toward a lesson they would never forget. "May the gods of whatever world you came from have mercy on you," she whispered. "Because we will not." The trap was set. Now, all humanity had to do was wait. 3 days passed in silence. Lord Calithver stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars drift by. His fleet moved through human space like a knife through water, meeting no resistance. No human ships came to challenge them. No weapons fired. No demands were made. It was almost disappointing. "You see?" he said to Sareth, his tactical officer. "I told you the humans were nothing to fear. They sent their little warning, and now they hide in their stations like frightened animals." Sareth nodded, but he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The silence was too complete, too perfect. In his experience, when prey went completely quiet, it usually meant a predator was nearby. "My lord," he said carefully, "perhaps we should increase our sensor sweeps." "Just to be certain?" Calithver made an annoyed sound. "You worry too much. But fine. If it makes you feel better, do your sweeps." Sareth ordered the sensor teams to scan everything around the fleet. They found nothing. Empty space. Distant stars. The occasional asteroid drifting in the void. No ships. No stations. No threats of any kind. What the sensors did not show were the human vessels hiding in the darkness. They ran completely cold, their engines shut down, their power systems reduced to the bare minimum needed to keep their crews alive. They drifted like dead things, invisible to any technology the Veth possessed. There were thousands of them. Admiral Chen Wei sat in the command chair of the HSS. Silent wind. Watching the Veth fleet through passive sensors that detected only heat and light. His ship had been following the enemy for 3 days, maintaining a distance of exactly 50,000 kilometers. Close enough to watch, far enough to remain unseen. Around him, his crew worked in near total darkness. They spoke in whispers. They moved carefully. Every action was practiced and precise. These were the Shadow Fleet, humanity's hidden sword. They had trained their entire lives for a moment like this. "Admiral," his executive officer said quietly, "the Veth are right where we want them. Another 2 days, and they'll be in the Expanse." Chun nodded slowly. "Good. Maintain position. No one moves until I give the order." The Morrigan Expanse was a region of space that most species avoided. Gravitational anomalies made navigation difficult. Strange energy fields played havoc with sensors. Ships that entered without proper charts often became lost, drifting for weeks until their supplies ran out. Humans had spent 200 years mapping every centimeter of the Expanse. They knew its secrets better than they knew their own bodies. And they had turned it into the perfect trap. On the 4th day, the first signs of trouble appeared. A communications officer on one of the Veth ships noticed something strange. His long-range antenna was not receiving signals from home. He ran diagnostics. Everything seemed fine. But the signals just stopped. He reported it to his captain. The captain reported it to Lord Calithfor. "Equipment failure," Calithfor said dismissively. "We are far from hegemony space. Some interference is expected." But then more ships reported the same problem. One by one, across the entire fleet, communication systems began to fail. Not breaking down, the equipment still worked perfectly. The signals simply did not arrive. Then the navigation computers went dark. Sarah stared at his console in disbelief. The star charts were gone. The position data was corrupted. The automatic course corrections had stopped working. His ship was flying blind. "My lord," he said, his voice shaking, "we have a serious problem." For the first time, Lord Calithfor felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He looked at his own navigation display and saw nothing but static. Outside the viewport, the stars looked wrong somehow. They were not in the positions he remembered from an hour ago. "What is happening?" he demanded. No one had an answer. What was happening was simple but terrifying. For 3 days, human ships had been making tiny adjustments to the Veth fleet's course. A small gravitational pull here, a carefully placed energy field there. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would trigger alarms. Just gentle nudges that slowly, invisibly, pushed the fleet off its planned route. The Veth had not been traveling through human space. They had been herded, like animals being driven toward a slaughterhouse. Now they were deep in the Morrigan Expanse, surrounded by gravitational traps and sensor dead zones. Their communications were jammed by technology they could not detect. Their navigation was scrambled by methods they did not understand. They were blind. They were lost. And they were exactly where the humans wanted them. On Station Prometheus, Commander Vasquez received a single message from Admiral Chun. Package delivered. She allowed herself a small smile. Then she opened a channel to the Veth flagship. "Lord Calithfor," she said, her voice echoing across the confused bridge of the Dominion of Stars. "This is Commander Vasquez. You were warned." Calithfor stared at the speakers as if they had grown teeth. "How are you doing this? What have you done to my fleet?" "We have done nothing yet," Vasquez replied. "Your fleet is currently sitting in the middle of the Morrigan Expanse. Your sensors cannot see what surrounds you. Your communications cannot reach anyone who might help you. Your navigation cannot find a way out." She paused to let her words sink in. "You have approximately 96 hours of supplies remaining. After that, your crews will begin to starve. Your ships will begin to fail. and no one in the galaxy will know what happened to you. On the bridge of his flagship, Lord Calithfer felt something he had not felt in 60 years of warfare. He felt afraid. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to understand something," Vasquez said. 300 years ago, humanity sent a message to every species in this galaxy. We told them that our space was sovereign. We told them that anyone who entered without permission would face consequences. Most species listened. "You did not. You cannot defeat us," Calithfer shouted, trying to sound confident. "We have 200 warships. You have nothing that can match our firepower." The communication went silent for a long moment. When Vasquez spoke again, her voice was almost sad. "Lord Calithfer, you still don't understand. We are not going to fight you. We are going to teach you. And when the lesson is over, you will carry what you have learned back to your hegemony. You will tell them what happens when someone crosses human territory. And for the next 100 years, no one will make your mistake again. And if I refuse?" Calithfer asked. "Then your fleet dies here, alone, forgotten, a mystery that the hegemony will never solve." The transmission ended. Lord Calithfer stood in the darkness of his own bridge, surrounded by officers who looked to him for guidance. For the first time in his long life, he had no idea what to do. Outside, in the black emptiness of the expanse, thousands of human ships waited in perfect silence, patient, ready, watching. The lesson was about to begin. The waiting was the worst part. For 2 days, the Veth fleet sat in the darkness of the Morrigan expanse. No attacks came. No demands were made. The human voice had gone silent after delivering its threat, leaving 200 ships floating in a void they could not navigate. Crew members began to panic. Fights broke out on several vessels. One ship's captain had to execute 3 of his own officers to maintain order. Supplies were running low, and no one knew when or if help would come. Lord Calithfer paced the bridge of his flagship like a caged animal. He had sent scouts in every direction, trying to find a way out of the expanse. 2 had returned, reporting nothing but more empty space and sensor interference. 3 had not returned at all. "My lord," Sareth said, approaching carefully, "the crew is losing hope. We need to do something. What would you have me do?" Calithfer snapped. "We cannot navigate. We cannot communicate. We cannot even see what is around us." As if in answer to his words, lights appeared in the darkness. Small human vessels emerged from the void, one appearing beside each Veth ship. They were tiny compared to the massive warships, barely larger than shuttles. But they moved with perfect precision, positioning themselves exactly where they could be seen without threatening. Then they began to broadcast. The message was the same for every ship, delivered in perfect Veth language with no emotion, no anger, no pride. Just simple facts. "Attention, Veth vessel. You are surrounded by human territorial defense forces. You have 2 options. First option, power down your weapons and lower your shields. You will be escorted safely out of human space. Your crew will be fed. Your ship will be refueled. You will return home with your lives. Second option, refuse. Your ship will be destroyed. There will be no third option. You have 1 hour to decide." Lord Calithfer listened to the message with growing rage. These humans thought they could order him around? Him? He had conquered empires. He had made kings beg for mercy. He grabbed the communication controls. "All ships, this is Lord Calithfer. We will not surrender to these primitives. Power up all weapons. Target the nearest human vessel and fire on my command." "My lord," Sareth shouted, "we don't know what's out there. This could be a mistake." "The only mistake," Calithfer growled, "was letting these humans think they could threaten the hegemony." "All ships fire." 63 captains obeyed the order. Their ships powered up weapons and fired at the small human vessels floating beside them. Every shot missed. The human ships moved at the last moment, dodging with impossible speed and precision. They slipped away into the darkness, and for a brief second, nothing happened. Then the humans fired back. Admiral Chun gave the order from the bridge of the silent wind. He felt no joy in what was about to happen. Only grim necessity. Weapons free on hostile vessels only, he said. Surrendering ships are not to be touched. Humanity had spent 300 years developing weapons that the galaxy had never seen. They had tested them in secret, far from prying eyes. They had improved them, generation after generation, until they were perfect. Now those weapons spoke for the first time. Beams of light cut through the darkness, but they were not ordinary energy weapons. They bypassed shields entirely, passing through them as if they did not exist. They struck the hulls of the attacking ships and simply unmade them. Metal, plastic, flesh, everything touched by the beams broke apart at the molecular level. The first Veth ship died in silence, its entire crew gone before they could scream. Then the second. Then the third. Lord Calithver watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. Ships that had survived 100 battles were reduced to expanding clouds of debris in seconds. The human weapons did not burn or explode, they erased. One moment a ship existed. The next moment, it was gone. "Cease fire!" he screamed. "All ships, cease fire!" But it was too late for the ships that had obeyed his order. The humans did not pursue those who tried to run. They did not chase down fleeing vessels. They simply eliminated every ship that had fired a weapon, and then they stopped. In 4 hours, it was over. 63 Veth ships had been destroyed. Over 100,000 Veth soldiers were dead. Not because they had to die, but because their commander had been too proud to listen. The remaining 137 ships had done the smart thing. They had powered down their weapons, lowered their shields, and waited. Now human vessels surrounded them, not small scouts, but massive warships that made even the largest Veth cruiser look like a toy. Lord Calithver stared at the destruction around him. The debris of his fleet filled the view screen, tumbling slowly in the zero gravity of space. Each piece had once been a ship under his command. Each spark of metal had once been a soldier who trusted him. His communications console activated. Commander Vasquez's voice filled the bridge. "Lord Calithver, you have lost 63 ships and over 100,000 personnel. The remaining ships in your fleet have surrendered. You now have a choice to make." "What choice?" he asked, his voice hollow. "You can surrender with your fleet. You will be treated with dignity. You will be returned to the hegemony to deliver our message. Or you can continue fighting. Your flagship will join the debris field around you. The choice is yours, but know this, we have no interest in killing you. We never wanted this battle. You forced it upon yourself." Calithver looked at Sareth. The young officer's face was pale, his scales almost white with fear. Around him, the bridge crew waited in silence. None of them wanted to die. None of them had asked for this. The old Veth Lord closed his eyes. For 60 years, he had never surrendered. He had never admitted defeat. But today, he had learned something that all the battles in his history had not taught him. There were some enemies you could not beat. "We surrender," he said quietly. "A wise decision," Vasquez replied. "Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Welcome to human space, Lord Calithver. Let me show you what you tried to cross." Human soldiers came aboard the Dominion of Stars an hour later. They were professional and efficient. They did not gloat or threaten. They simply secured the ship, treated the wounded, and began distributing food and water to the exhausted crew. Calithver was escorted to a shuttle and taken to Station Prometheus. As he traveled, He looked out the viewport at the human fleet that now surrounded his surviving ships. He counted over 3,000 vessels, more than he had ever seen gathered in one place. And he knew, with terrible certainty, that this was not even their full strength. The humans had hidden this power for 300 years. They had let the galaxy believe they were weak while they built an armada that could crush any empire in existence. The question that haunted him was simple. Why? He would get his answer soon enough. Lord Calithver had seen many prisons in his life. He had built some of them himself. But Station Prometheus was not what he expected. His cell was comfortable, more like a guest room than a cage. There was a bed with clean sheets, a desk with writing materials, and a window that looked out at the stars. Human guards brought him food 3 times a day, and it was good food, better than military rations. They spoke to him politely and answered his questions honestly. It was the kindness that disturbed him most. He had expected torture. He had expected demands and threats. Instead, he got meals and courtesy. On the 3rd day, Commander Vasquez came to see him. She entered alone, without guards, and sat across from him at the small table in his room. Her gray-streaked hair was tied back, and her eyes studied him with curiosity rather than hatred. "Do you understand now?" she asked. Calithver did not answer immediately. He had spent 3 days thinking about everything that had happened, his arrogance, his assumptions, the destruction of his fleet. Every memory brought fresh shame. "I understand that I made a terrible mistake," he finally said. "I underestimated your people." "You did," Vasquez agreed. "But you are not the first, and you will not be the last. That is why you are still alive." "I don't understand." "I killed." "You killed." He struggled with the words. "Over 100,000 of my soldiers died because of my pride. Why would you show me mercy?" Vasquez leaned back in her chair. "Because dead men don't carry messages. Your soldiers died because they attacked us. You survived because you can still be useful." "Useful how?" "You are going home, Lord Calithver. You and every surviving member of your fleet. Your ships have been repaired and refueled. Your crews have been fed and rested. In 2 days, you will leave human space and return to the hegemony." Calithver stared at her in disbelief. "You're letting us go? Just like that?" "Just like that. But you will carry something with you." She placed a small data crystal on the table between them. It was no larger than a fingernail, but Calithver looked at it like it might bite him. "This contains complete recordings of everything that happened to your fleet," Vasquez explained. "Every order you gave, every weapon we used, every ship that was destroyed. There is no editing, no propaganda, just the truth. Why would you give us this? It shows your weapons, your tactics, your capabilities." "Exactly." Vasquez's voice was calm but firm. "We want the hegemony to know what we can do. We want them to see exactly what happens when someone crosses our territory. And we want them to share this information with every other power in the galaxy." She leaned forward. "We are not trying to keep secrets anymore, Lord Calithver. We are making a statement. The statement is simple. Leave us alone, and we leave you alone. Cross our borders without permission, and we will destroy you." "You want to frighten us," Calithver said slowly. "No, we want to inform you. Fear fades with time. Information stays forever." The data crystal also contained something else: technical specifications for some of the weapons used against the Veth fleet. Not complete blueprints, but enough information for any competent scientist to understand the basic principles. Enough to prove that humanity's technology was not centuries behind the rest of the galaxy, but centuries ahead. When Calithver returned to the hegemony, he was stripped of his rank and titles. His name became a curse word among Veth military officers. He spent the rest of his days in disgrace, avoided by former friends and mocked by enemies. But the data crystal was taken seriously. Within weeks, copies spread across the galaxy. The crystalline accord watched the recordings in their council chambers and immediately ordered all ships to stay at least 10 light years from human borders. The merchant lords of Keth, famous for their ability to calculate profit and loss, calculated that trading with humans was far more profitable than fighting them. They sent diplomats instead of warships. Even the Veth hegemony, despite their wounded pride, complied with humanity's terms. They recognized human territorial claims. They paid compensation for the resources their fleet had consumed. They broadcast a formal apology on every hegemony channel. The apology was written by Calthver himself. It was his final public act, and he put everything he had learned into it. We entered human space believing we were strong, and they were weak, he wrote. We were wrong. Not because they defeated us in battle. Many empires have lost battles and risen again. We were wrong because we did not listen when they warned us. They asked only to be left alone. We refused. The fault was ours. Back on Station Prometheus, Commander Vasquez watched the apology broadcast with Admiral Chun. They stood together at the observation deck, looking out at the stars that humanity had claimed as their own. They'll remember now, Chun said. For a while at least. Vasquez nodded slowly. The hegemony will remember for maybe 100 years. Their children will remember the stories. But their grandchildren? Their great-grandchildren? They'll look at the recordings and think they must be exaggerated. They'll convince themselves that we got lucky, or that our technology has grown weak. And then someone will try again. Someone always tries again. That's the nature of the galaxy. Empires rise and fall. Memories fade. Pride returns. She turned to face him. That's why we stay prepared. That's why we keep building. That's why we never show our full strength. Chun frowned. We showed quite a lot this time. We showed enough to make them afraid. We didn't show everything. They think 3,000 ships was our full fleet. They don't know about the bases we have in the outer systems. They don't know about the weapons we've developed since then. She smiled a small, tired smile. We're always one step ahead, Admiral. That's what keeps us safe. Chun looked at the data on his tablet. The surviving Veth ships were preparing to leave. 137 vessels that would carry humanity's message to every corner of the galaxy. Do you think it will work? He asked. Do you think this will actually stop them from trying again? Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. No, it won't stop them forever. Nothing can. But it will stop them for now. And every generation that passes in peace is a victory. Every child who grows up without seeing war is worth the effort we put into this. She watched the Veth ships begin their journey home. We don't fight because we want to, she said quietly. We fight because we have to. And when we fight, we make sure the lesson lasts as long as possible. That's the human way. The first Veth ship crossed out of human territory 12 days later. As it passed the border marker, its captain looked back at the space he had nearly died in. He never wanted to see it again. And for the next 50 years, no one would. 50 years changed everything and nothing. The Veth hegemony, weakened by the humiliation in human space, fell apart. Civil wars tore the empire into pieces. Warlords fought over scraps of territory. Billions died in conflicts that had nothing to do with humanity. From the ashes rose something new, the reformed Veth collective. It was smaller than the old hegemony, more careful, more thoughtful. It was led by a young admiral named Selithvor. She was the granddaughter of the disgraced Lord Kelithvor. She had grown up with his shame hanging over her family like a dark cloud. Other children mocked her. Teachers looked at her with pity. Everyone expected her to fail, to disappear into obscurity like her grandfather had. Instead, She became the youngest admiral in Veth history. Salathvar had studied the old recordings more times than she could count. She had read her grandfather's private journals, recovered after his death. She understood what he had done wrong, not just the tactical mistakes, but the deeper failures of thinking that had led to them. He had assumed humans were weak because they did not act like they were strong. He had judged them by Veth standards instead of trying to understand them on their own terms. He had walked into a trap because he could not imagine that the trap existed. She would not make the same mistakes. When her ship approached the border of human space, she stopped. She sent a formal diplomatic request through proper channels. She waited for permission. It took 6 months. Humans, she learned, were very careful about who they let into their territory. They asked questions. They verified answers. They watched and waited and tested. Finally, permission came. Salathvar was invited to Station Prometheus, the same station where her grandfather had surrendered 50 years ago. She was granted an audience with the Human Territorial Council. The station had changed in 5 decades. It was larger now, more modern, but it still felt the same. There was a weight to the air, a sense of history pressing down on everything. This was a place where important things had happened. The council chamber was simply a round room with chairs arranged in a circle. No thrones, no platforms, no symbols of power or authority. Just people sitting together as equals. The eldest member of the council was a woman named Elena Vasquez. She was the granddaughter of Commander Yellen Vasquez, who had sent the first warning to the Veth fleet all those years ago. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Admiral Salathvar," she said, her voice warm but measured. "Welcome to human space. I understand you have questions for us." Salathvar had prepared a dozen diplomatic speeches. She had rehearsed careful phrases about peace and cooperation. But when she looked at this woman, this human who held the weight of her people's history, she found that she only wanted to ask one thing. Why? She said, "Why did you let us forget?" Elena tilted her head slightly. "I'm not sure I understand. 50 years ago, you showed us that you were powerful beyond anything we had imagined. You could have used that power to conquer us. You could have dominated the galaxy. Instead, you stayed hidden. You let other species believe you were weak. You let them forget what you were capable of." She leaned forward, her voice intense. "My grandfather wrote in his journals that understanding humans was the key to survival in this galaxy. I have studied your species for 20 years, and I still don't understand. What do you want?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. The other council members watched in silence, waiting. "That's a big question," Elena finally said. "I'll try to give you an honest answer." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth hung in the distance, a small blue dot against the endless black. 300 years ago, when we first reached the stars, we had a choice. We could try to build an empire like every other species we'd encountered. We could expand, conquer, dominate. We had the technology. We had the numbers. We had the will. She turned back to face Salathvar. We chose not to. Do you know why? No, because we remembered what we had done to ourselves. Elena's voice grew soft, almost sad. Human history is not a pretty story, Admiral. We have committed terrible acts against our own kind. Wars that killed millions. Genocides that wiped out entire peoples. Weapons that could have ended our civilization forever. We know exactly what we are capable of, the very worst things any species can do. She met Salathvar's eyes directly. We don't want to be that species anymore. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We don't want to rule over other peoples. We just want to live in peace, raise our children, and be left alone. But you keep your weapons, Salathvar pointed out. You keep your hidden fleets. Yes, because we also know that peace requires strength. If we were weak, others would take what we have. They would destroy us without a second thought, not out of hatred, but simply because they could. So we stay strong enough that attacking us is never worth the cost. Elena returned to her seat. We let the galaxy forget because forgetting is useful. When other species think we're weak, they don't watch us closely. They don't try to steal our technology. They don't form alliances against us. They leave us alone, which is all we ever wanted. And when someone forgets too much, when someone crosses your borders, then we remind them. Elena's voice hardened slightly. We remind them as gently as we can, but we always remind them. Your grandfather was not the first, and he won't be the last. Every few generations, someone tests us. Every time we pass the test. Sci-Fi thought about this for a long time. She thought about her grandfather's journals, full of regret and confusion. She thought about the recordings she had watched hundreds of times, trying to understand the species that had humiliated the mighty hegemony. And if we forget again? She asked quietly. If my people make the same mistake my grandfather did? Elena Vasquez smiled, not a cruel smile, but one filled with infinite patience and something that might have been compassion. Then we remind you again, as many times as it takes. We're patient, Admiral. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned that some lessons need to be repeated. She gestured toward the window, toward the small blue world that had produced such a terrifying species. That's the human way. We don't seek war. We don't seek empire. We seek only to protect our own. But when we have to fight, we fight with everything we have. And we never, ever stop until the lesson is learned. Sci-Fi stood slowly. She looked at Elena Vasquez, at the council members, at the station that had been built to guard the gateway to human space. I think I understand now, she said. You're not trying to be feared. You're not trying to be loved. You're just trying to exist. Exactly. Elena rose to shake her hand. We have no quarrel with the Veth Collective. We have no quarrel with anyone who respects our borders. Trade with us. Talk with us. Visit us. Just don't try to take what is ours. And if we do? Elena's grip tightened just slightly. Her eyes held a fire that had burned for 300 years and would burn for 300 more. Then the galaxy will remember the price. Again. Sci-Fi returned to her ship an hour later. As she crossed back into Veth space, she began writing a report for her government. It would become the foundation of Veth foreign policy for the next century. The report had only one main conclusion. Leave the humans alone. Let them have their corner of the galaxy. Trade with them. Be polite to them. But never, under any circumstances, give them a reason to remind anyone of what they can do. Some lessons, once learned, should never be tested again. Far behind her. On Station Prometheus, Elena Vasquez stood at the window and watched the Veth ship disappear into the stars. She thought about her grandmother, who had sent the first warning all those years ago. She thought about all the people who had worked so hard to build this peace and protect it. Do you think she understood? Asked a voice behind her. Elena turned to see Admiral Chun's grandson, young Captain Michael Chun, standing in the doorway. I think so, she said. She's smart. She makes sure her people remember. And the next one? The one who comes after her forgets? Elena looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, another species was probably already forgetting. Already starting to believe that humans were weak. Already planning to test the boundaries. That was fine. Humans were patient. They would wait. They would watch. And when the time came, they would remind the galaxy once again. That was the price of crossing human territory. And the galaxy would always remember it one way or another.